innate well-being. We never really stop. Whether it is learning about a certain topic in great depth or just hearing something you didn't know in a quiz show, we never really stop learning. This will to learn comes from passion and curiosity, as well as a critical and reflective mindset, and getting learners to be ambitious about their subject and their future. This is the very basis of my teaching philosophy. Inspiring learners is not always an easy task, as it relies on the teacher to not only impart their knowledge on the learners, but also make the subject interesting enough so that they'll pay attention. You're not so overstimulating that the lesson is lost through overcommunication. This presents several difficulties, as the teacher needs to know how the learners will react to the lesson plan, but also keep up with current culture to ensure that the methods of imparting knowledge is not regarded as old and therefore not of value. The teacher also needs to keep updated with the latest educational theories, whilst also knowing what works from previous decades. As such, knowledge must be viewed on different levels that are constantly being attained. Furthermore, inspiring learners relies on a level of trust and confidence in the teacher. This can be achieved by encouraging learners through positive praise as well as constructive criticism. This is given not to dishearten the students, but to encourage them to try and attain a higher level of comprehension than they already have. Although it is important to use praise fairly and ensure that learners are growing and progressing, rather than simply giving out praise when not needed, as this, it could be argued, could give a learner a conflated sense of self, without the ability to be emotionally resistant, or more importantly, self-reflective, which we'll get onto later. This would be one of the more important aims of my teaching philosophy, not only to encourage and facilitate learning in my own subject specialism, but to also encourage and cultivate personal traits that will serve the learner well in their adult lives. Another important aspect of encouraging passion for learning is to encourage the learners to have a sense of ownership over their work. This allows for a learner to be proud of their own work, as when any person takes personal pride in their work, the quality of their work invariably improves. This effect is of particular importance for students, as when learners are not interested, their work may not be up to markable standards, or may not be completed at all sometimes. To give the learners ownership over their work, I would seek to give them a more creative control, with guidance from me if I think it's required, or if I think their work can be improved by asking pertinent questions, or if they need a fresh perspective. This can be quite a risky strategy, and as such, will be introduced to the learners slowly, so not to give them too much information too quickly, or make them feel like they're being abandoned, and I'm simply there letting them do their own thing. However, despite this, I believe this will be an effective strategy when trying to get learners interested and passionate about the subject specialism, as well as passionate about learning. Aspect of my teaching philosophy is getting learners to be critical and reflective over their own work and others' work. This skill will be useful not only if they choose to study at university, but also in and out of the media industry. By instilling this skill in learners, it can give them a platform for professional and personal development. Putting this into practice can be difficult. One method can be giving the learners a sense of ownership over the work, and therefore a desire to improve on what they've already done. However, there are many more ways to get learners to be critical and reflective over their own work. Looking at Valori's theories of key concept, which is simply building what the learner already knows, and then tying this in with concept mapping, allows for learners to be creative, which in itself will often make learners more willing to engage with the task than by doing something they would not find as stimulating. One example of fostering a critical and reflective mindset is through the learner's consumption of media. By teaching learners to assess a news story to see if it is factually based, or has often been coined as fake news, then setting the learners an exercise where they be asked how they know something is fake. This will build a reflective mindset, as they would have to evaluate why they thought something was not real. This would then link into a critical mindset, as it would have to provide substantiation for their claims. This is especially important in the media industry, as there are often conflicting facts and evidence. In conjunction with this, I would also ask each learner to be consistently asking why they're doing certain things, whether they are making a film, writing an essay, or creating a poster. This will foster a critical mindset, as learners will be consistently evaluating what they have been doing. As a teacher, I would also be setting an example by continuously being critical of the materials that I provide, as well as reflecting on what the learners gain from my lessons. The learners then should follow this example and start to emulate my practices. This would also be done through each learner striving to get the best from their work and their peers' work through group work, as learning is a social task, although careful behaviour management is required, so that being critical does not become self-doubting or disrespectful to others. To ensure that this does not become the case, I'll be espousing the values that BMET and many other colleges stand by: ready, respectful, and safe. The learner should always be ready to learn and therefore continuously developing a critical mindset, as well as reflecting on their behaviour. Respectfulness would be taught as having good manners, which would be incorporated into British values. The safe aspect would be following all protocol that the college and my classroom demands. This may sound like a lot. This may sound like a lot on the learners. However, if there is continuous positive reinforcement and feedback, the learners should strive to attain these values, as by doing so, unknowingly further their development of a critical and reflective mindset, both in and outside of the classroom. Another method I would like to incorporate into my teaching philosophy is that I, as the teacher, will challenge the learners to find out more information by themselves. How I would do this in the classroom is to give the learners an outline of the task and what they were doing, but not give them all the information that they would need to complete the task. For example, if the student were to be researching genre as a concept, I would define what a genre was and then give examples and ask for an example of a film and what genre was from the learners in return. I would then set out a task for learners to find out what genres there were and ask them to find about each genre's conventions, tropes, then record them in a blog or sketchbook to show evidence and progress, thereby giving the learners enough information so that they understand what they're meant to do, but not so much that the tasks will be done too quickly because I've given them all the information, and this could be called spoon feeding. This will enable the learners to search for themselves and find information that will require them to have a critical mindset, as they have to decide if what they're reading makes sense to them, as well as installing a reflective mindset simultaneously, as they would have to look back over the work and continuously critique and change what they have done. The last aspect of this approach is that I would be asking the learners both individually and as a whole class questions that would test the knowledge to demonstrate learning and assimilation. I would then use this as a building block for the next lesson, calling back to their previous knowledge, making them continuously reflect on what they have learnt and critically judge any new information given to them by myself or any resource that they find independently. In my teaching philosophy, I have talked about getting learners to be passionate and instilling a reflective, creative mindset, as well as discussing ideas around classroom management and being reflective as a teacher to get the best from my learners. This all amounts to one thing: understanding the roles of a teacher. A role of a teacher is not just the teacher's subject specialism, but to also protect students and look after their well-being by adhering to all safeguarding practices set out by the government, Ofsted, and college or school that I'll be working in. Furthermore, a teacher is also there to teach moral lessons to ensure that learners can be integrated into wider society once they leave college, regardless of whether they go to university or straight into employment. This is not only done through British values, but also through setting a positive moral example. As such, a teacher, in some ways, has to hold themselves in higher values and standards than some other professions, as they are not only instructing learners in a subject, but creating a new generation of citizens who become the leaders of industry, business, education, and policy making, as well as being part of professions that society could not live without, such as electricians, plumbers. Therefore, it is essential that learners have a positive example of what a professional should act like.
Created using Powtoon.